Hello, my name is Adam and welcome to the Lead Realm. Thank you for joining me on my journey to paint the models of my youth. Today we're going to be painting the heroes for the Revenge of the Doomlord army. We have two classic metal wights on foot from the 1990s Undead range. Lovely, heavy one-piece sculpts with billowing capes and really ornate armour details. Alongside those, we've got two mounted wights. These are from the slightly later range of early 6th edition, I think, but they still carry a lot of the same design language, such as the winged headdresses and armour details. We start, as always, by giving all of the bone areas a coat of bleached bone, followed by a wash of skeleton horde. I want these characters to feel cohesive within the rest of the army, so I'm going to try and follow the same visual themes and approaches to some of the elements, such as sticking with the same core approach to the armour. I've decided to paint some of the decorative armour details as bone, even though they might technically be metal or some other material. Perhaps it's not strictly accurate to how the sculpture imagined, but it keeps things consistent across the army by bringing similar colour palettes into each model. That said, I do want to push things a little further, bringing in some new ideas and expanding on some of the colours I've introduced in other units in the army. For the bone highlights, the horses receive a light dry brush, followed by more deliberate highlights placed with a brush. Whereas on the wights themselves, the bone areas are much smaller, so instead I only apply the highlights via the brush. After using Screaming Skull, I pick out the upper edges and raised areas with white scar to give a bit of contrast and definition. I would like to incorporate more of the jade green throughout these models, perhaps in the weapons or armour somehow. This will hopefully give them a magical feel. But overall, the goal is simple: to have these models feel consistent within the army, but to give them just enough extra presence to feel like characters. Next, we move on to the armour, which is painted using Mournfang Brown, a couple of thin coats over anything that at this stage we think will end up copper. I was a little unsure how the models were going to look in the end whilst doing this step. On the rank and file units, the brown works nicely in smaller amounts. But here, because these models are so heavily armoured, I was afraid it might be a little overpowering. I wasn't completely convinced that it would balance out in the end, but sometimes you encounter these periods of doubt during painting. And in my case, I usually decide to keep going and adjust things later if needed. Once the armour has been highlighted up through Kislev flesh and eventually white scar, I follow this up with thin washes of jade green into the recesses. Sometimes I will go back and add a second wash, or some more targeted drops of paint to boost the contrast and add some definition. At this point, I decided to pause and reassess. On some of the models, the balance appears to work, but on others, the brown feels a bit too dominant. So, I decided to introduce more variation through the armor trim. There are a few new textures featured on the mounted models, such as scale mail, which I've decided to treat similarly to the chainmail from earlier units. Therefore, I go back in and pick out any trim, chainmail and scale mail with storm vermin fur, which is then given a wash of null oil to deepen the shadows and bring out the details. Once that's dry, I re-establish the midtones again and gradually build up the highlights, mixing in more white scar, focusing on the edges and raised surfaces. Leather and wood are painted with Doomlord brown, and, as mentioned before, the cloaks and any fabrics are painted with Phoenician purple, which ties back into the army's main colour scheme. This is where things get a bit more experimental. I start introducing jade green onto the wings of the headdresses as well as the weapons. The idea is to take that accent colour and to push it further on these character models so that they stand out a bit more but still feel part of the same force. Once applied, it's washed with null oil, again to add depths and to tone down the colour slightly. Our purple is highlighted in the same way as before by mixing a little Rakarth flesh into the Phoenician purple in gradually higher amounts until a final coat of pure Rakarth flesh on just the edges. For the inside of the cloak, I went back and forth a bit on this. Originally, I had considered something lighter, such as an off-white or beige colour, but in the end I decided to go with a dark tone. Pure black highlighted up through storm vermin grey, which I think helps frame the model and keeps the focus on the brighter elements. Rebuild the midtones and start layering highlights by adding a little white scar into the jade green, softening the transitions where needed. You may have noticed throughout the video that some parts of the model get completed out of order. Sometimes this is because I'm not sure what colour I want to paint an area until later on during the process, and in others it's to make access to the underlying colours a little bit easier without having to go back and repaint things. It's especially noticeable on this model on the little skulls adorned on his weapon and chest plate. For the weapons, I'm not aiming to replicate the non-metallic metal featured on my other units, but but I'm also not chasing a crystalline effect either. It's more about creating something visually interesting that reads well on the tabletop. I'm not sure if it turned out exactly like I was imagining, but it certainly stands out. I thought that having the whole headdress be the same jade green might stand out too much. So, for the trim on the foot wights, I decided to darken things down and pick out the ribs of the headdress in black, adding some restrained highlights focusing on the edges and tips with a lighter grey. However, after sitting with it for a while and comparing the foot wights and the mounted wights, I actually think I prefer the solid green headdresses of the mounted wights over the ones with the black edges. But that's okay. I can mix the scheme up on future models, and the slight variations between them will ensure that the character models each have something a little bit different about them. Once everything's painted, I remove the mounted wights from their painting handles, tidying up the undersides in preparation to attach them to their horses. These areas aren't very visible, but I still want to ensure everything is covered. So I remove any excess cork and give the bare undercoat areas a coat of the mid-tone colour for that material. For the bases, I've added some crushed slate just to give a bit more variation on these larger cavalry bases. Otherwise, it's the same basing process as before: sand with PVA, a grey base coat, a null oil wash, and then gradual highlights focusing more and more on the edges of the bases to give the effect that they have some shadow under the models. Off camera, they receive 2 coats of gloss varnish, followed by 1 of ultra matte. The bases are finished with black rims and a few grass tufts. And here are the finished models. Overall, I'm happy with how they've turned out. There are definitely areas I could have refined a bit further, or perhaps took a step back to evaluate before pushing on. There are some choices I made that perhaps I played a little bit safe by falling back on the established colour scheme. But at the same time, that consistency helps them sit naturally within the army. But before I tackle the main character of the Force, Dieter Hellschnitt, I'll probably spend a bit more time thinking through some of these smaller details, just to avoid repeating the same ideas too often or making the same mistakes again. For now though, these chaps are ready to join the rest of the Force, so let's get them in the cabinet. We're close to finishing this army now, just a few units left to go. I think I'll be tackling the carrion for my next video, as I'm short on time in the coming weeks. But, as always, I'd be interested to hear what you think. Do you prefer your characters to stand out from the rest of your army? Or are you happy for them to blend in a bit more? Please do let me know in the comments. But, for now, thank you for joining me in this video. I hope you've enjoyed watching me paint these horrific heroes. As always, stay old school and long live the lead.